All right, first grade friends, we are back for the next chapter, and this one is called Socks and the Formula. So remember last chapter, the pet that they brought home was actually a baby, and Socks was not getting the attention that he was used to, so let's find out what happens. The arrival of Charles William upset the order of Socks's life. Meals were no longer served on time, laps were always occupied, lights were turned on in the night, and washing machines swished and the dryer hummed at odd hours. The house was filled with lint from new diapers, which tickled his nose. The Brickers' friends who once had admired Socks now came to admire the baby. Tiffy, the little girl next door who loved babies and who was also liked to pick up cats, usually around the middle, came to watch Charles William's bath almost every morning. Socks spent a lot of time sneezing among the fluffs of dust under the bed in the front bedroom where Tiffy could not get to him. The one comfort in Socks's life was leftover formula, sometimes a few drops and others an ounce or two, which was poured into a bowl after the baby was fed. Socks began to wait for the sound of Charles William smacking at his bottle. So if you don't know what formula is something that babies drink as their food because they can't eat real food yet. That baby! His cries grew louder and his smacks greedier. His neck became strong enough to support his head. His eyes stopped crossing. He made the exciting discovery that his hands belonged to him, and he waved them happily. He kicked his feet and said, "Ah, gug, 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 gug." "He's a big boy." "Yes, he is," cried Mrs. Bricker in the voice that used to belong to her cat. Socks, on the other hand, grew lazy. Instead of chasing his ping-pong ball across the living room, down the hall, and into the bedroom where Mr. Bricker would have to reach for it, he now patted it with a curved paw and let it roll off by itself. When the mailman brought Charles William another present, Socks examined the wrapping paper, but he no longer bothered to hide under it or play with the ribbon. One Sunday afternoon, Socks, comfortably full of warm formula, was dozing in a patch of sunshine on the living room carpet when another set of visitors arrived to see the baby. They were Charles William's Uncle Walter, Aunt Cassie, and 8-year-old cousin Mike, who was carrying a package wrapped in paper printed with blue rabbits. Socks remembered these people. Aunt Cassie's lap was narrow and hard. Uncle Walter enjoyed rumpling a cat's fur so that the cat had to lick and lick and lick to get himself in order. Mike teased. This afternoon, however, Socks felt too comfortable and drowsy to flee. The first thing Uncle Walter did upon entering the house was to take off his hat, which he wore to cover his bald head, and shy it across the room so that it landed on Socks. "Hiya, Socks, old boy," said Uncle Walter. Then he added to Mr. Bricker, his brother-in-law, "I see you're still keeping that cat." Socks glared from under the brim of the hat, but he did not budge. Mrs. Bricker proudly carried Charles William into the living room to show him her brother's family, and she dressed him in one of the many little knit suits that the mailman had brought, and his rosy feet were bare. There's Socks hiding under the cat that Uncle Walter threw at him. Charles William took one look at Uncle Walter and screamed. Socks came out from under the hat with a start and retreated under a chair. He recognized fear when he heard it and accepted the scream as a warning of danger. If Charles William was in danger, so was he. Maybe Charles William was of some sort after all. Mrs. Bricker also recognized the cry of fear. She sat down on the couch and held Charles William close. "Did something frighten the baby?" she asked tenderly. "It's all right. Nothing's going to hurt the baby." Charles William hid his face in his mother's neck and sobbed. "Maybe a pin is sticking him," suggested Uncle Walter. Charles William, braver than his mother, held him close, stole a look at the visitors, shrieked again, and shivering with sobs, hid his face. Socks peered from under the chair. Everyone was seated, and although the Brickers were concerned, no one appeared frightened. "Oh, it's just Walter's bald head," said Aunt Cassie matter-of-factly. "All babies are frightened the first time they see a bald head." "What am I supposed to do?" asked Uncle Walter. "Take off my head and carry it under my arm?" Aunt Cassie, not a woman for baby talk, took hold of Charles William's hand. "Charles William, you will be fine, healthy boy," she said, and turned to her son. "Mike, say hello to your new cousin." "Hi, Chucky," said Mike, who plainly thought of babies being boring. Visiting relatives was boring too, and a waste of a good afternoon. He set the package on the couch as if he were glad to get rid of it, and flopped back into the chair. Charles William took his face out of his mother's neck, looked at Uncle Walter, and howled again. I don't think Charles William likes his uncle. "For goodness sake, Walter, put on your hat," said Aunt Cassie. "Nobody cares if you wear it in the house, and you can't expect a baby to understand the whole world all at once." Uncle Walter picked up his hat from the carpet and did as he was told. Charles William's sobs ceased. With the danger, whatever it was, out of the way, Socks turned a weary eye on Mike, who was slumped in a chair staring at the ceiling. The boy looked harmless enough, but Socks did not trust him for a minute. As he watched, his ears picked up the faint, threatening wail of another cat, the sort of wail that leads to frightening with fangs and claws. The wail grew louder. Where could that cat be? Socks looked anxiously around the room, half expecting to see the old black cat that sometimes prowled across the backyard. The sound was all the more frightening because Socks could not find the creature who was making it. "Mike, stop that noise," said Aunt Cassie. "You'll frighten Charles William, and stop slouching." The cat wail stopped, but Socks continued to keep an eye out for the enemy. He also watched Mike, who remained slumped in the chair, bored with the opening of the gift. Bored with the exclamations over the brown corduroy bear that his mother had bought at a church bazaar. There's Mike sitting on the couch, and who's hiding under the chair? Looks like Socks. The small bear caught Socks' attention, and he did not find it boring at all. The bear was going to make good sparring partner, and Socks could not wait to get at it. "All babies love soft bears, and I knew you had enough clothes by now," said Aunt Cassie, who was holding Charles William on her lap. "Have you started him on egg yolk yet?" Socks looked longingly at the bear, which Mrs. Bricker was holding on her lap as if she needed something to take the place of Charles William. "Say, Bill," said Uncle Walter to Mr. Bricker, "have you thought about buying the kid an encyclopedia? Now's a good time. The price goes up the first of the year." Mr. Bricker tried to swallow a yawn. He had given Charles William his bottle at 2 o'clock that morning, and getting the air bubble out of him had taken longer than usual. Mike was bored with the egg yolk discussion, and he was bored with his father sitting there under his hat, trying to sell a set of encyclopedia. He stared thoughtfully at Socks, who was still watching the bear from under the chair. Then, looking innocently in another direction, Mike parted his lips and began to pant in short, quick pants like a dog. The pupils of Socks' golden green eyes grew large and black. A dog in the house? Where? The enemy cat returned with a threatening wail. The dog panted. Socks was terrified. He was surrounded by invisible enemies. Wild-eyed, he darted from under the chair to the center of the rug. All right, so that's part 1 of chapter 3. So I'll come back with another video of part 2.